Teresa Skubic, and this is Forum Daily for Monday, June 15th. Pakistan's prime minister says the United States and Iran have reached an agreement to end their conflict and are expected to formally sign the deal Friday in Switzerland. The prime minister announced the agreement on social media, saying it calls for an immediate and permanent end to military operations across the region, including in Lebanon. The reported breakthrough comes despite an Israeli strike on Lebanon on Sunday that drew criticism from both Iran and U.S. President Donald Trump. Details of the agreement have not yet been released, and it remains unclear what conditions were included in the deal. World leaders welcomed the initial agreement earlier today between the United States and Iran.
Australia welcomes the agreement between the United States of America and Iran. We have called consistently for a de-escalation and for an end to this conflict. And we know that it's been announced that there'll be a signing of the agreement on Friday. We want this agreement to stick.
We welcome this morning's announcement of a deal between the US and Iran, and we also want to thank the Pakistani and Qatari leadership who have mediated the deal. Obviously, it remains an incredibly fragile situation, but this news gives us the best hope of peace since the conflict began 3.5 months ago.
There's the deal that has been announced now by US and Iran that is much welcomed by everybody. It is the first phase to open the Strait of Hormuz and then move on to the negotiations on the critical topics.
This is a hugely significant moment. We have long called for de-escalation, and it is vital that all parties seize this opportunity to secure stability in the region and restore freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is heading to France for the G7 summit, where tensions in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine are expected to be at the top of the agenda. Speaking to Irish broadcaster RTE over the weekend, Carney said the situation in Iran would be topic number one for G7 leaders, while Russia's war in Ukraine also remains a major focus.
This G7 is going to have as often happens with G7s, a very heavy geopolitical element to it, given very fluid events in the Gulf. And I would say, as we, on this fine day, trending in a positive direction, but one cannot take anything for granted, as well as Ukraine. Obviously, President Zelensky will be there, and a host of other important issues from global imbalances, which you don't have as a discussion just amongst bilaterally. You have to have it multilaterally, as well as AI safety. So I think the principle, to come back to the core of the answer, the principal discussions, our expectation, this is kind of in many respects the right way to do it at this stage, will be between the principal negotiators, which is going to happen on Evian. The moral choice is to do everything we can to establish a ceasefire and build that into a durable ceasefire and ultimately peace in the region, including Lebanon. Canada will do whatever we can in order to support that. Part of supporting that, of course, is to reduce the threats from Iran and its proxies against its neighbors, and that's a broad definition, as well as the nuclear threats. So there are encouraging signs as we meet here today, and I think the responsibility of the G7 is, and the other actors who are coming, regional powers who are coming, is to do what we can to build on that progress that has been established.
And while speaking on the tarmac this morning before heading to France, Carney said that he would have an opportunity at the G7 summit to see what Canada and other countries can do to help reinforce the progress so far.
I very much welcome the peace deal, or the ceasefire deal, the 60-day truce. I know President Trump has worked very hard for this, as has the Vice President, the Qataris, the Pakistanis, but all the countries in the region supporting this. So Canada very much welcomes this progress. We'll have an opportunity starting from tonight at the G7 in Evian to see what we and other countries can do to help reinforce this important progress has been made, and also from a broader regional perspective, including in Lebanon and beyond. And I guess the other thing I'd say is that it underscores one of the things we'll work on going forward, when I say going forward from this evening, is how do we make our system, our energy system, our fertilizer systems, our other commodity systems more resilient, so the people of Ireland, the people of Canada are less affected when there is conflict.
Carney is also expected to meet with several European leaders during the summit. U.S. President Donald Trump is scheduled to attend, though it remains unclear whether the two leaders will hold a bilateral meeting. And as leaders prepare to tackle those challenges, Carney says the summit itself reflects a changing global order, one in which the G7 no longer holds the outsized influence that it once did. Speaking in Paris, Carney said that the group of advanced economies still plays an important coordinating role, but no longer holds the same level of global dominance that it once did. He pointed to shifting power dynamics, rising influence from emerging economies, and ongoing global conflicts as factors reshaping international decision-making. Carney added that while the G7 remains relevant, it must adapt to a world where leadership is more distributed and complex than in previous decades.
I mean, there'll be some issues where there are strongly held views by one of the G7 partners that, are more extreme than others. And I'm not saying just one. I mean, each of us may have examples of that. If you look at the key issues of security around the Gulf, evolution of the Gulf War, and the situation in Ukraine, the security situation and providing support, very much common objectives. How do we work together in order to accomplish? I think, yes, different approaches around AI, but I think there's a chance to have, or a possibility of having a common objectives with different complementary approaches that are there. So I don't go, I'm looking forward to this summit, and I'm looking forward, as I should add as well, last point, the broader participation that will be at the summit, everyone from Kenya through to the UAE who will be there at the broader outreach. That's an important component of this, because the G7 is not running the world. It's important, but it's not running the world.
Carney's comments on the shifting global order come as he unveiled a new bilateral agreement with France aimed at deepening cooperation on defense and emerging technologies. Carney says the partnership will strengthen cooperation between Ottawa and Paris on emerging technologies and national security, while helping both countries respond to increasingly complex global threats. The agreement is expected to facilitate closer collaboration on AI development, cybersecurity, and defense innovation, areas that have become increasingly important.
Businesses in both of our countries are doing more together in energy, defense, critical minerals, and now in AI. And to deepen our defense and industrial cooperation today, the President and I are advancing a new General Security of Information Agreement. What this means is an ability to exchange classified information between our defense, our space, our AI, and aerospace sectors. And as the President mentioned a few weeks ago at the European political community in Yerevan, I was honored to attend, and I said at that meeting that I believe that the next world order will likely be built out of Europe, and Canada will be part of that effort. In security, as the first non-European member to join SAFE, as the President mentioned, under his leadership, Canada is a key member of the coalition of willing to support Ukraine. In critical minerals, working with Minister Lescure as a reliable supplier to our core European partners, working with our European partners to expand our collective strategic capabilities from energy to hardware, intelligence infrastructure, and space. Working together, Canada, France, and Europe are poised to be a powerful force for good in the century ahead.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is pushing back against the Prime Minister's European tour, questioning its value for Canadian workers at a time of ongoing trade uncertainty with the United States. Poilievre argues that Canada already maintains a trade agreement with Ireland, which is one of the places the Prime Minister just met. He also said that the Prime Minister's trip is unlikely to deliver meaningful new benefits for workers who are facing economic pressure from U.S. tariffs. He says the government should be focusing on domestic economic challenges and strengthening existing trade relationships rather than pursuing additional diplomatic visits abroad.
In fact, Mark Carney is arriving at the G7 summit tomorrow as the only leader who's taken his country into a recession. And yes, there'll be lots of grand signing ceremonies and dazzling speeches signifying nothing. But we've had free trade with Europe for over a decade, no thanks to Mark Carney. We have tariff-free access to Europe that we cannot use because the Liberal government blocks the construction of LNG plants and pipelines that would actually get our products to the European market. If Mark Carney wants to diversify trade and get us out of the recession that he created, then he actually needs to do work here at home to remove the anti-development laws his party put in place and that remain on the books so that we can actually ship our goods overseas to Europe. He doesn't need to sign yet another meaningless memorandum that is unenforceable and entirely symbolic.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced Britain will ban children under the age of 16 from using social media apps such as Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube starting early next year. The measure is aimed at protecting young people from harmful online content and reducing excessive screen time. Starmer acknowledged that some teenagers may try to bypass the restrictions, but said the focus is on improving children's safety and well-being. Major tech companies, including YouTube and Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, have warned that a blanket ban could push young users towards less regulated online spaces. The policy aligns with broader international efforts to strengthen online protections for children as governments move to tighten digital safety rules.
Because today is a big moment for our country. This is a big step. Real change for our children and our future. Because today I can announce that the government will ban access to social media for all children under the age of 16. This is not something I do lightly, and I will not present it as cost-free, as if social media has brought no benefits to young people, because clearly that is wrong. But government is always about choices. And it's clear to me that a full ban is the right choice. Now, I come to it as a parent myself. I know exactly the fears that we all feel when we're thinking about this issue. You know, all I've ever wanted for my own children, hand on heart, is for them to be happy and for them to be safe. And I think that's what any parent wants. But I ask the question now, do we truly believe that social media creates a happy environment for our children? Do we truly believe that it's a place where they can feel safe? I don't think I even need to answer those questions, do I?
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and MP Andrew Lawton say that they want to scrap the federal sales tax on used vehicles as part of a broader effort to make life more affordable for Canadians. Lawton has introduced the proposal of Bill C-285, known as the Used Car Tax Cut Act, which would eliminate the Goods and Services Tax, or GST, on used vehicle sales. Under the plan, used vehicles would be classified as zero-rated, meaning buyers would no longer have to pay GST when purchasing them, similar to how some farm equipment and resale homes are treated under federal tax rules. At a news conference announcing the proposal, Poilievre said taxes on used cars are adding to the financial strain facing many working Canadians already dealing with the rising cost of living.
Almost every Canadian needs a truck or a car, and most people of modest means rely on used vehicles to save some money. Yet the government imposes double, triple, and sometimes even quadruple taxes on the same vehicle. When someone buys a car new, they pay the tax. When it's resold as used, the new buyer pays the tax again. If it gets sold a third time, it's paid, that tax is paid. It could be 5 times in a row of federal sales taxes on the same vehicle. The endlessly repeating tax on used cars is a tax on the working poor, on low-income seniors, and on small businesses. That is government greed, and greedy government makes for poorer people. Conservatives are fighting to restore affordability here at home, and that's why Conservatives are announcing MP Andrew Lawton's bill to scrap the sales tax on used cars altogether. The principle is that the GST should only apply once at the final sale and never again. Scrapping the tax on used cars will save you $1,835 on the average used vehicle.
And on the issue of affordability, Ottawa unveiled its latest major initiative last week aimed at strengthening food security across the country. The program is part of a broader federal push to address rising grocery costs and improve access to affordable, locally sourced food for Canadian families. Our contributor, David Clement, has more.
Ottawa has launched its National Food Security Strategy, committing $1 billion over the next 10 years to fight food inflation and shore up the country's food system. The strategy focuses on three main goals: increasing competition in the grocery retail sector, reducing Canada's heavy reliance on imported food, and improving access to locally produced goods. This comes as prices remain a top concern for Canadians, because since January 2020, food inflation in Canada has risen 31%. The U.S., in comparison, saw a 32% increase over the same period, while Britain recorded the highest rise at 39%. As of April, year-over-year food inflation stood at 3.8%, according to StatsCan. The centerpiece of the new strategy is a $1 billion Food Link Fund to build new food terminals and regional food hubs. These facilities would allow small independent grocers, especially those in rural and remote areas, to buy directly from producers instead of relying on the distribution networks of big chains. Economist Michael Van Masso from the University of Guelph says that while the investment is positive, the government has limited power to actually lower prices on grocery store shelves, saying, quote, "The government, really to a significant degree, has their hands tied." He noted, pointing to global factors like tariffs and climate change as the main drivers of higher costs. Now, the strategy also includes up to $400 million in new funding to help small food processors expand and attract new processors to Canada, because Canada currently lags its peers in processing capacity, meaning much of the food grown here is shipped abroad to be processed before coming back. Professor Van Masso added that boosting local production through greenhouses and automation will not lower prices, but it will probably stabilize prices by making supply more reliable year-round. Canada currently imports 72% of its vegetables and 88% of its fresh fruit, and the new plan aims to reduce that dependence. Gary Sands, Vice President of Government Relations at the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers, welcomed the announcement. He said the new hubs will cut expensive transportation costs, especially for communities in the Maritimes and Newfoundland, and could lead to lower prices in rural areas. He said, quote, "There's always more that could be done, but this is a big step in the direction that we think we need to be moving in." The strategy also promises changes to privacy laws to address surveillance pricing and makes reference to allowing for the temporary use of certain pesticides under specific conditions, though few details were provided. This latest move builds on the government's recent Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit, which puts money directly into people's pockets. While independent grocers are optimistic, experts caution that these investments are unlikely to deliver big, immediate drops in grocery bills. For many Canadians, relief may continue to come from more direct supports than from major price reductions at the checkout.
Nova Scotia says that it has recruited 33 doctors from the United States as physician hiring in the province reaches record levels. The province says the new recruits are part of an ongoing effort to strengthen healthcare staffing and improve access to primary care for residents. Officials say the hiring surge comes amid broader competition for medical professionals across North America as jurisdictions look to address shortages in the system. The government says more recruitment efforts are underway as it continues to expand its health workforce. And the federal government is set to introduce two major pieces of legislation this week aimed at strengthening privacy protections and improving access to clean drinking water in First Nations communities. One bill would update Canada's private sector privacy law with new measures expected to protect children's data and prevent companies from using personal information for surveillance-based pricing. It marks the Liberal government's third attempt to modernize the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act. A second bill would focus on water infrastructure on First Nation lands, covering source water, drinking water, and wastewater systems. The government says both measures are intended to address long-standing gaps in privacy protections and essential services. And the federal government has tabled new legislation aimed at changing how Canada blocks imports linked to forced labor as trade tensions with the United States continue to rise. The move comes in response to a new tariff threat from the Trump administration targeting dozens of countries, including Canada. The proposed bill would establish a public list of goods tied to forced labor in specific regions. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand was in Paris alongside Prime Minister Mark Carney when the legislation was introduced in the House of Commons by Parliamentary Secretary Rob Oliphant.
And I'm here today on behalf of Anita Anand to acknowledge and to let you know that we have introduced legislation today in the House of Commons, which will be known as Bill C-35, which will strengthen Canada's regime for forced labor and ensuring that Canadian goods and products, goods that come into Canada are free of forced labor and are fairly produced, and so that consumers can rest at night knowing that they are buying goods which have been fairly produced. Canada stands firmly against forced labor. It's a form of exploitation and a very flagrant abuse of human rights. It's unacceptable, and it is a moral imperative that Canada continue to address it. This is not a new issue for Canada. Obviously, we have been a leading regime on addressing the issue of forced labor. However, we have identified that there are gaps in our regime, and this bill will not only strengthen it, but actually make some very significant changes.
A plane carrying a pilot and 11 passengers on a skydiving excursion crashed Sunday in Missouri, killing everyone on board. The Missouri State Highway Patrol says troopers responded to the crash site near Butler Memorial Airport, assisting local police and the Bates County Sheriff's Office. Officials say the aircraft went down and was engulfed in flames shortly after 11:30 a.m. local time. The plane was taking passengers for a recreational skydiving flight.
Today at 11:30 this morning, we had a plane crash on the property of the airport. We are treating that as a mass casualty. This is not a commercial airliner that has crashed. It's a local airplane that took off from our local airport. It's been here. It's not something that travels. It's not a commercial airline. Not a whole lot of questions I can answer as to it's still an investigation. The investigation is going to be handled by the NTSB and the FAA, who the FAA is here on scene. The NTSB is not yet. We're waiting for them to get here and for them to do what they do. The plane took off, and then at that point, it went down. We're not sure exactly anything beyond that. We're still trying to identify family and make notifications, and so we're going to be respectful of that. There were witnesses that were family members, yes.
Investigators are now working to determine what caused the crash. And American singer and comedian Oliver Tree was among 6 people killed when 2 helicopters collided over Rio de Janeiro on Sunday morning, Brazilian authorities have confirmed. The helicopters crashed in the city's western zone, with one aircraft coming down on a car dealership and igniting several parked electric vehicles before firefighters extinguished the blaze. Police had earlier said Tree appeared on a passenger manifest submitted to aviation authorities, but officials had delayed identification until the victims could be formally confirmed. The 32-year-old musician had recently performed in Buenos Aires and posted videos from Brazil on social media just hours before the crash. Authorities are investigating the cause of the mid-air collision. SpaceX has cemented itself as one of the most influential companies in the world, revolutionizing itself from satellite communications to space travel. The company's valuation has surged to eye-popping levels, making it one of the most valuable private firms on the planet and fueling renewed interest from investors.
It is certainly hard to believe that a little company that started in a warehouse in El Segundo is now going public with the largest IPO that ever. And let me tell you, if people had told me this was going to happen, I was like, man, you must be smoking some really good crack, because I think this company's going to fail. We want to be able to take anyone who wants to go to the moon, anyone who wants to go to Mars, or anywhere in the solar system, and maybe beyond the solar system at some point. We want to be able to take you there. Not just a few astronauts. I mean you. And I'm confident at this point that with the incredible team that we have here at SpaceX, that we will do that for you.
But with the company now in the spotlight, questions are being raised about whether its market value is supported by its financial performance and what risks investors should keep in mind. I'm now joined by Brendan Caldwell, Director of Caldwell Securities Limited, to help us make sense of the numbers and what they mean for investors. Brendan, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, and thank you for having the two lead-in stories be about plane crashes, because it seems potentially apropos. Let's do this.
Well, I want to start just for our viewers, what exactly is SpaceX and why did it go public now?
Well, so SpaceX is a bit of a misnomer because it's actually a mishmash of a whole bunch of different everything that isn't Tesla, Elon Musk companies. So it is SpaceX. It is the company that took 80% of all the payloads up into space last year. It is Starlink. It is X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. It's XAI. It's a whole bunch of things rolled into one, and that's been taken public. Why now? Because the time to get the money is not is when you can get it. And right now, the market is at or near all-time highs. There have been a dearth. There's been a very few initial public offerings. There has been huge hype and around AI, which is actually most of what this money is actually going to be spent on, the 75 odd billion dollars that was raised. And most of it's going to be invested in AI infrastructure. So it's being done now, not because the company's ready for prime time necessarily, but because the money is available and available at a considerable valuation. Really quite impressive.
And Brendan, what are investors actually paying for? Because right now, some people are saying that SpaceX numbers aren't actually adding up.
Well, you heard Mr. Musk in his halted speech there about how it's to infinity and beyond. He may as well have said, like straight out of Toy Story, that we're going to be taking not just millionaires and billionaires, but you beyond the solar system. Hey, and I am very much in favor, because it's a very strange thing that just before I was born, they landed on the moon. By the time my little brother was born, we'd stopped. That we'd actually stopped being interested in space as a species. So that he's reigniting interest in space, absolutely, all in favor, all for it. And the premise, though, is that the economy of space is going to need to be bigger than the economy of this planet for the valuation of SpaceX to make sense in the years to come. Because at the moment, investors are buying into a dream. They're buying into the dream of people on the moon, people on Mars, space colonies, AI in space. What could possibly go wrong? About mirrors sending energy back to space, and about all these things that could be and might be. But even the most terrestrial challenges, business ideas, are harder and more difficult. And to borrow from Matt Damon, in space is not forgiving. It does not cooperate. I think it's worth investors pausing for a moment and realizing that they are buying into a dream. I think a worthwhile dream that'll probably be good for humanity, but there aren't the numbers to back it up.
And if the financials don't justify it, what's driving the SpaceX valuation?
It's Elon. He is the CEO and has control of 2 of the 10 largest market capitalization companies on the face of the earth. At present, SpaceX is actually worth more than Tesla. Actually, it's nestled somewhere in between, I think, Meta and Amazon in terms of valuations. And the other companies in the more than $1 trillion category in terms of a market valuation for the company are trading at order of magnitude 30 times earnings. The exception being Tesla, which is trading at, I think, roughly 375 times earnings. But that looks like a deal compared to SpaceX, which at present has no earnings. I think it's trading at roughly, if I'm not mistaken, 10 times revenue. I think that's the number. So I might even actually off by orders of magnitude, but it's trading at large multiples to revenue and in infinite to infinity and beyond when it comes to its multiples to earnings. So people are buying into a dream, and it may be fulfilled. The economy of space may be amazing, and I hope it will be, because I do think that, notwithstanding the challenges we have on this planet, humanity has been at its best, at its worst, but also at its best when it has strived toward a common goal, when we've tried to achieve, create, build something that's bigger than ourselves, where we have dreams, where we have stories, we have narratives, and whatever else he may be good at, Mr. Musk is extremely good at those narratives. And he has delivered some very cool cars in their time, state of the art. He is taking more into space than everybody else combined. So he's not only good at delivering stories, but also delivering on those stories. But he's going to have to deliver an awful lot to make the SpaceX valuation worthwhile in the next few years.
Well, and when it comes to SpaceX, Elon Musk controls the votes. Do you think that should worry investors? We have about a minute left.
Oh, well, I think it goes both ways. I think that some investors may be worried, but some investors may buy into it because Elon Musk controls the votes. They're buying into the Elon story. They're buying into the man, the mission, moon, the Mars, and beyond. If anybody else controlled the company, it would be to them like somebody taking over from Steve Jobs, which happened once to Apple's demise. Tim Cook did a better job the second time somebody took over from Steve Jobs. But it's like Steve Jobs was to Apple, Elon Musk is to these two companies, both to Tesla and to SpaceX. So I don't think there's a market of investors that should be concerned, but there's also a market for investors that want that and nothing but that.
Well, Brendan, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Teresa.
U.S. President Donald Trump marked his 80th birthday alongside America's 250th with a UFC event held on the White House lawn. The fight night, the first professional sporting event ever held at a presidential residence, was delayed by an hour due to thunderstorms. UFC President Dana White, a longtime ally of Trump, attended alongside other administration officials. At one point during the event, the crowd sang happy birthday to the president. White spoke to the media following the event.
Things going on in this city up until July 4th to celebrate, and the fact that he trusted me to do this and to deliver tonight, and we did. And like I said, I did all the media. We went to New York. I did far left. I did far right. I did down the middle. I did it all. And I believe that if you are an American, no matter where you sit politically, tonight was a proud night to just sit around and enjoy the 250th birthday of America. I was just honored to be able to be. I was honored to be the person that he trusted to deliver tonight. And I hope everybody, as an American, feels that we did.
American golfer Bud Cauley has captured his first PGA Tour victory, winning the RBC Canadian Open after a long-awaited breakthrough on tour. Cauley, who had played 239 PGA Tour events over 15 years without a win, finally broke through to secure his maiden title in dramatic fashion at one of golf's most historic tournaments.
The sweet taste of victory for the very first time. Cooper came out to greet him first. And then Christy carries Miles out with her.
His career has also included major setbacks, including a serious car accident in June of 2018 that left him significantly injured and forced him to miss multiple events. England's Matt Fitzpatrick finished second, 2 shots back as Colley held off the field to claim the victory north of the border. Colley spoke to reporters about what this win means to him.
I've thought about that moment a lot, if it were to come and, to get my first win on tour and for it to work out that my family would also be there. And, I started to get choked up even before I went up there and tapped in. I saw him standing, behind the green, and it means a lot. Everything just feels perfect. I've put a lot of work into my game and trying to do the right things too that would, equate to some success and playing well. And, it was a tough day out there with the rain and the wind, and I really stayed patient and hit a lot of good shots and made some putts, and I'm very proud of how I played.
The New York Knicks have captured their first NBA championship since 1973, defeating the San Antonio Spurs 94-90 in Game 5 behind a dominant 45-point performance from Jalen Brunson.
Fox to Wemby. Wemby tries a three, puts it up, off the mark. Anunoby the rebound. It's over. It's over. Knick fans, this is not a dream. Your long, long wait has ended. Go ahead and cry. After 53 years, the Knicks are finally NBA champions once again.
Fans gathered outside Madison Square Garden to watch the game on the big screen, and they erupted in celebration as the Knicks rallied from a 16-point deficit to secure the victory in San Antonio.
Wemby tries a three, puts it up, off the mark.
We just won the NBA Finals for the first time in 50 years. Like, this is insane. Like, I don't know how else to describe it.
Soon after the win, tens of thousands of fans poured into the streets of New York City, with celebrations in Times Square turning chaotic as some individuals clashed with police, damaged property, and climbed public structures and vehicles. Police say a 17-year-old was shot near 42nd Street and Broadway around 2 a.m. and was transported to hospital due to heavy crowds blocking emergency access. A gun was recovered at the scene, and 3 people were taken into custody as investigations continue. And the Carolina Hurricanes have captured their first Stanley Cup in 20 years, defeating the Vegas Golden Knights 3-0 in Game 6 with a dominant defensive performance.
What a deserving Stanley Cup champion the Carolina Hurricanes are. One of the best teams in the regular season and a brilliant playoff performance.
And they're going to clinch it appropriately with a total team effort and a shutout. The Carolina Hurricanes have won the Stanley Cup for the second time.
Canes forward Jordan Staal was named the Conn Smythe Trophy winner as playoff MVP. Staal ends a 17-year wait between Stanley Cup championships, setting a new NHL record for the longest gap between titles before finally lifting the trophy again alongside Commissioner Gary Bettman.
This year's recipient has played for the Carolina Hurricanes longer than any other player. He tied a record for a goal-scoring streak in the final, and his face-off percentage win of almost 70% almost actually sets a record. And finally, Jordan Staal, you are the oldest player to win the Conn Smythe Trophy.
Oldest, 37 years, 277 days. The oldest prior was Tim Thomas, but it's Jordan Staal, Conn Smythe Trophy winner.
The veteran forward played a key leadership role throughout the playoffs as Carolina secured its first championship in 2 decades. And David Beckham has been awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, recognizing his global impact on sport and entertainment. The former England captain was honored in Los Angeles, where fans gathered to celebrate the ceremony, making his latest career milestone. Beckham, who enjoyed a decorated playing career with Manchester United, Real Madrid, and LA Galaxy, has remained a major public figure through his work in fashion, business, and philanthropy. He joins a select group of international athletes to receive Hollywood's honor, cementing his status as one of football's most recognizable global icons. His wife, Victoria, spoke at the event.
So naturally, I assumed I was coming here today to receive my star for my part in that iconic cult classic, Spice World the movie. But as it turns out, earning a star takes a little more than surviving the late 90s box office. It takes vision, determination, and an extraordinary amount of hard work. So to see David's name become part of that story today is incredibly special. Like so many before him, David came to America with a dream to share his passion for the beautiful game with as many people as he could and help make soccer, one of this country's great sports. He believed that if he worked hard and dreamed big enough, anything was possible.
And Canada is back on the training pitch in Vancouver after a rest day, following its opening match at the FIFA World Cup. The Canadians opened the tournament with a 1-1 draw against Bosnia and Toronto and now sit in a 4-way tie in Group B, with all teams level on 1 point after the first round of matches. But the draw means even more. The lone goal that the Canadian squad scored helped secure Canada's first ever point at the Men's World Cup. Canada's head coach Jesse Marsh spoke on the history-making achievement.
What's first ever in Canadian history, right? So we should also be happy and enjoy that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about.
Okay, good.
Getting the first point on home soil, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but you did it with Ryan Reynolds, Connor McDavid, and Mike Myers on hand as well.
Mike Myers was here?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Sweet. Look, I get so, you can't help it when you're a coach. You get so focused in on what you want your team to be. Right. And obviously, I know this is the week in Toronto has been amazing and the fans have been outstanding. But I'm really just so focused in trying to make sure that our players are equipped with everything they need to be the best that they can be. And so, I feel like I didn't do enough to get them ready for the first half, but then the response that we showed in the second half and maybe some of the messages I gave at halftime helped. So, we have the iconic 11. I saw Boy Wonder on the TV at one point. I know that there's a lot of different people that are enjoying the World Cup in Canada, but my job, I'm focused so lasered in on just making sure that we can give the country a team to be proud of and that the.
I'm Teresa Skubik. Good night, Canada.